Alrighty, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of season 3 of GameSense. I'm Francis O'Rourke, and I'm the host of GameSense today. Before we begin, I'd like to shout out to our main sponsor, Symbotic. They do a lot of really cool stuff with warehouse automation, and they've been supporting GameSense for a couple of years now, so check them out at Symbotic.com. I'll first off introduce our hosts and our guests today. First off, we have Tremblay. We have Evan Morrison, we have Ruth Toomey, and also our guest today is Spencer Tickman, live from the Purdue studios in wherever Purdue is in Indiana. Spencer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe a little bit about Indiana, too.
Okay, so I was on 1318 back in PNW, and now I go to Purdue and am the technical director for Team 1747. Yeah.
Sweet.
Very, very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. We're really excited to have you here. And even though some people on Facebook may be saying otherwise, this is, in fact, his first time on the show, just letting everybody know. Alrighty, well, after our main show, we're going to have a 20 or 30-minute Q&A session. If you have a question for us, and you're watching on Twitch TV, go into the chat, type !, then Q, and your question, and our chatbot will pick it up and send it to us automatically. And if we like it, we'll read it live on air. One last thing before we begin, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We hope that you don't either. If you don't like what we have to say, go out there and prove us wrong. It's a lot more fun that way. This week on the show, it's all about the upcoming district championships. Regionals are over for the season. So all we've got left is the Michigan, Indiana, Mar, Georgia, and New England championships. But first off, let's take a look at what happened this week already. Evan, why don't you start us off talking about the Pacific Northwest Championship?
Cool. Well, boy, Pacific Northwest Championship was crazy fun. And this game only gets better at high levels of play. It's just absolutely nuts. We were, I guess, lucky enough, good enough, I don't even really know, to seed first. I mean, we definitely played some good matches. We didn't have the crazy hard match schedule that we sometimes got at districts. But, yeah, it was a fun event.
Very cool. Hey, actually, I totally forgot because let's first off, we want to do shout-outs, or excuse me, we want to do observations from week 6. I apologize, everybody, for skipping the order. I do have to shout out to begin with, though. Shout out to my roommate, Andrew Naring, for loaning me his laptop because mine crapped out on me right before the show. So I'm a little out of sorts. So let's start off.
Unfortunately, though, Francis's roommate's laptop only runs in 144p. So that's
yes, it is a little. It is a very nice laptop, but it's running Windows 8. So let's start off with some observations from this week. So Spencer, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so we're seeing as breaching becomes more trivial and captures become more common that ranking points really start to matter. We saw in PNW this weekend that the top 14 teams were within like just a few ranking points, and that any one mess up could cause them the whole thing. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting just to see how captures start being a whole lot more important, and that just breaching is not enough to carry you through qualifications.
Yeah, I agree, and to build on that, and kind of flow directly into my observation, I think now that captures are almost critical in order to A, seed high, and B, win in playoffs, we're gonna start to see a lot more teams get surprised by how quickly they can be and how effectively they can be defended. Because it used to be an all-out sprint to see who could actually pull off the capture to get the win, but now that the captures are almost guaranteed, a little bit of defense to try and shut down that capture is going to become much more effective.
Very true. Ruth, what is your observation for this week?
I'm going to kind of piggyback on the captures are starting to get really commonplace for now. But we'll talk a bit more about that later in the show.
Cool. Well, I got to say, when I was at an event this week, I was at the Montgomery District in the Mid-Atlantic region. I got to say, we're finally starting to see a lot of people score high goals. It's starting to become a lot more commonplace, and we're starting to see sort of, I wouldn't say how the game was designed, but we're starting to see how the game's going to look as we start to reach the apex of competition this year.
Oh,
Speaking of that,
Uh,
Evan, why don't you go ahead and talk about what your observation was from this week?
Well, everybody knows West Coast is best coast, and we saw the debut of not one, not two, but 3 successful 2-ball auto routines this weekend. 254, 971, and the honorary West Coaster is 987 High Rollers down in Arizona.
Nevada is the West Coast, right? Like,
It's not
there's
a
no
coast, Francis.
Doesn't have any coast. Mostly desert.
But regardless, I mean, people were saying that it couldn't be done, and it has been done, but still, it's not nearly as common as 2-ball autos were in 2014. It's almost like the 3-ball auto in 2014. There were very, very few teams that designed to be able to do it, and they're the only ones that can really pull it off. So I'm curious to see if there's other teams that are looking to add that to their repertoire, but I don't think it's going to be a very common thing at championships at all.
Okay, I tend to agree with you on that. Well, anyway, back to what we were talking about before I screwed up the whole show. Evan, why don't you sort of give a rundown on your experience this week at the Pacific Northwest District Championship?
Yeah, well, as I said, it was a blast, and my team, Apex 5803, was able to come away as the #1 seed going into playoffs. And we actually selected a really crazy, amazing alliance of 1318 IRS and 3663 CPR, who really probably shouldn't have been around as long as they were, but they'd had some issues earlier in qualifications. They had a red card handed out, which was their second of the season. And so I know a lot of teams were kind of shying away from it in favor of some of the more reliable robots. We took a chance on them, and they performed beautifully for us in playoffs, but we still got knocked out in quarters by the #8 seed in 3 matches, there were a number of other upsets in quarters as well, and I think that just went to show the depth of the event and just how different qualification matches and rounds are from eliminations or playoffs. As Ty was saying, I mean, we on 5803, we built a robot for qualifications. That was our goal. Our team goal for the season was to qualify for championships, and we knew the best way to do that was to seed high. But it was not a robot to carry a #1 alliance through qualification matches. And kudos to the #8 seed. They played some great strategy with the defenses. They basically played the blow up the match strategy and amazing defense out there. Probably the most insane defense I've seen yet. Hotwire 2990 was basically driving over the dividers on the batter so that they wouldn't have to go around to get to somebody that was in a different spot. They would just go over. Yeah, it was effective. I had never seen anybody be able to shut down 1318 like that, and so yeah, that was our experience. But a lot of other really great teams there. Bare Metal struggled a little bit early, got their stuff together, played a fantastic 3-round semifinal series against Skunkworks on the same alliance as Chickens. So it's Flaming Chickens 1540, and Bare Metal going against Skunkworks 1983 and Error Code 1425. And just amazing, incredible, intense matches all the way around. And then, of course, the finals went to 3 matches as well, with 1 replay in there because of some field issues. 360's alliance of them and Raid came out on top. They beat Skunkworks and Error Code actually 3 times, one of them being replayed. Unfortunately, none of the finals matches had all 3 robots running the full time. So I don't know if it was really...
No,
yeah. They made the call, the Skunkworks Alliance made the call to not use their backup coupon on their 3rd robot 2907 in the first finals match, just sit them to have them fixed. And so they went out in that match and just played 2-on-3 and lost, obviously. Although they put up a really good fight. But Then second match, which was the replay, error code didn't initialize properly. They had to pre-start the field, and error code had an error in their code. Yeah. It was actually a known issue that they had to basically reboot the robot after that, and they weren't given a chance to do that. So they gave 360's Alliance the option to replay, and 360 said absolutely, even though they'd won the match. If they said no, that was going to be it. So a huge gracious professionalism from them. They also used their timeout to help get 2907 back on the field. And then match number 3, 1983, different robot every single time. 1983 stopped partway through autonomous mode, didn't come out of autonomous mode. They ended up having a remote reboot their robot, and the lost 40 seconds there just wasn't anything that they could come back from, along with error code dropping out partway through the match for about 20 seconds as well. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see finals with 6 working robots the whole time, but still just an incredible preview of what high-level play looks like.
Man, it's kind of too bad that last week we said that we were not going to talk about robots breaking again, but they keep breaking.
This is the game.
It's too bad.
It actually makes me really excited for championships, just because of the 4th robot option and the fact that when you have a situation like that with 2907 where they need a little more than just the timeout to fix it, you're going to be able to put somebody out there, field a full complement of robots, and give your partner the time they need to fix it without a permanent substitution.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's PNW.
Hello, Francis, are you there?
Oh. I know you generally want.
I think we're losing Francis.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Well.
All right.
Go Ty.
ahead, Evan.
While we're waiting for Francis, yeah.
We're so lost without our host.
Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Oh my God.
Yes.
Can you see
We
me?
can hear you and your potato.
Please.
Oh, jeez. All right.
Oh my.
All right. We're gonna get military style on this. All right. Evan, go.
Okay.
Next topic around is qualification strategies. Begin.
I'm the only one that's talking. All right, well, I'm going to hand this one off real quick, but I'm just going to say, the question that's kind of been on everybody's mind is how do you seed first? And apparently logoing actually really works for this. As we mentioned last week, Ty was talking about this, that it doesn't matter how many points you get as long as you win the match. And if you put enough balls in, great. And as for a significant number of robots and at a significant number of events, the robots that are consistently logoing are able to put more balls in, not more points, but more balls in the goal, and more often convert on that capture. And it's a very rare upper echelon that's actually able to match that with high goals. So, Spencer, I want to hear what you think about this, because you've been in Indiana where high goaling has been amazingly successful for a lot of teams out there.
Well, high goaling has been successful, but it's definitely not as consistent as the low goal bots. It's like 71 with the help of a relatively easy schedule. Definitely, they secured the #1 seed at the 3rd district event, and that was with them just putting in low goals. So there's not much you can do when a consistent low goal bot's out there. But with the consistency that we've had in Indiana, we've seen the high goal bots have seated in the top every time, just not the very top.
So actually something I saw that was interesting I wasn't at a week 6 district. I wasn't at a district championship. Something I saw that was interesting was there were a couple of teams that were able to shoot high that weren't actually focusing on trying to seed high. And they were just they were going through their cycles. They were trying to prove that they were the best high goal shooter out there, and they were relying on the pick coming up. And I wonder if I mean, it seems kind of risky to do that in the district champs. Do you think that's a possibility for what some people tried to do last weekend at district champs?
I don't know. From what I saw, everybody was kind of gunning for the high seed. Especially with how few points really separate everybody. I think it was 4-point difference was the difference between number 1 and 15th seed or 14th seed or something like that. So you really don't know who's going to be up there in the top that's doing the picking, and you're just going to be in a much better position overall to kind of take care of yourself and try and seed yourself.
Yeah, actually, something that's really interesting that I just realized is all 3 Week 6 district championships had low goal scorers with hangers as the number 1 seed.
That's an important point that I think we're probably going to touch on in a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, while so this brings up the next point is, you know, the capture is worth and a ranking point. It's worth a half a win, and you're almost guaranteed to be able to get the breach at a district championship. So it doesn't matter how, you don't need to score high to get the capture. So you can almost see that these low goal scorers that can get 6 or 8 or maybe even 9 balls in a match are going to get a breach and a capture in almost every single match that they get. So now we're talking about if you add on the wins to that, then, you know, almost how do you keep up with them? Because there are a lot of low goal scorers that can score 6 to 8 balls per match. But if you can score 6 to 8 high goals per match, then you're like an elite high goal scorer. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, a good example of this is sort of Team 125 from New England. They have a pretty accurate high goal scoring robot, but they've consistently seeded lower than really their robot ability is in all of their district events, because they don't necessarily have the consistency with the capture because they're going for the high goal a lot. Which is, you know, it's good for practicing for the championship. It's good for winning matches on points, but you can't guarantee that capture. And at this point, like I think we've been saying now, and I think it's becoming more and more evident, at the district championship, you best be capturing if you're expecting to get to the number 1 seed. Evan and Steph, how many times did you guys capture at your event?
Oh gosh. We captured all 3 matches on Saturday, 3 matches on Friday, and 1 match. So 7 out of 12 captures. But
yeah, exactly.
I think it's an important point here. And there were several ones that we were really, really close, either 1 ball away or we had the tower down and one of the robots rolled off the batter or something like that. But I think it's also important to mention that wins are still really important. I mean, we weren't number 1 seed with just captures. We also went 11-1. And that's kind of why I was surprised that we even managed to pull that off, because we had matches. I mean, we beat a combination of Shockwave and Sodabots in our very last match to get the 4 points to even give us a chance to be number 1 seed. And even then, it took the team. It took 4450 missing the capture or losing the match, and they actually did both in their last match to have them not jump us. So capture is all good and great, and if you keep doing capturing, you're definitely going to bubble up in the rankings, but you can't do it without wins. You have to be winning the matches.
Yeah, and actually,
and,
that,
you know,
that kind of no.
Go Ty.
All right. That kind of flows into our next topic we have there over on the ticker. Yeah, I am going Francis over there in like 15 seconds behind me, world. We're, you know, so we're seeing a lot of, or over the past 6 weeks, we've seen that the quals have been this all-out offensive race. You know, get as many points as you can, capture the tower, do the best you can. Because of the district champs, and because you've got probably the top, at least the top half of the whole district playing, are we going to start to see defense in quals, and is that a valid strategy? And if you are playing defense, what kind of defense are we talking about? Are we trying to deny the capture, or are we trying to do the win, or is it both? Spencer, what do you think?
Well, I think that we've already started seeing that in the sense that we've already had, at least at our last district event, we had captures were becoming relatively frequent in qualification matches. I think we had captures in 9 out of our 12 qualification matches. And once you have the capture, you can send that other robot over to play defense and without losing anything and just focus on shutting them down. And it's definitely going to start playing a major role.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that too. We played defense in our 2 kind of critical wins that I'd say, or not our robot itself, but our alliance. We found a way to play defense. The first was a match against, and I think it was Cyborg Ferrets and Raid 4469, who and I know it was Raid. I may be wrong on Cyborg Ferrets, but and we ended up winning that match. And then in the last match against Shockwave and Soda Bots, as I mentioned before, we had a robot go play defense there, and that was kind of a rarity for us because we were so worried about the risk of having one of those teams not make it back to the batter in time, either because of a robot problem that got them stuck or just some teams just kind of freaked out when the 30-second buzzer hits and they struggle with normally crossing. Oh, Stephanie's corrected me. It was 4469 and Mean Machine. Still 2 really powerful shooting robots there. So we erred on the side of the least risk and only played defense when we needed it. But certainly it's dependent on partners and who you trust to go out there, play some defense penalty free, and get back.
On that note, I don't think that we're going to see, like in the end, we're going to see a whole lot of the robot-on-robot defense. I've seen a lot of the ball starvation being a whole lot more effective because it helps your line to actually get balls and takes away, and there's no risk of getting red cards or fouls or anything like that. So.
Absolutely. And
So
you
ball
would think we were done
starvation
talking about red
in the
cards,
matter of
I don't want to talk about red cards.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so
Ty,
ball
what were you saying?
starvation in the matter of piling balls up in your secret passage, or are you talking of another strategy?
Well, so far we've just seen piling stuff up in Secret Passage, but I'm sure we'll see more later on in the season as teams pull out different things.
Yeah, and certainly one thing that we haven't seen a whole lot of is the breacher delivery bot, right? The guy that's going and getting a ball and just going across and dumping it in your courtyard, and then going and getting another ball and crossing and dumping it in your courtyard. Even if your shooting robots aren't using that, right? If your scorers are also going back to the secret passage to get a ball and score it, and then you just end up with a pile of balls in your courtyard that they can really quickly try and put in at the end of the match, maybe in the last 20 seconds after the defense is gone, etc. You end up in a situation where you legally can have just all of the balls in your courtyard, and it's really hard for one defense robot to start clearing those out. Now, obviously, it also can make it difficult for your scorers to navigate, so that's something to pay attention to. But I saw several times Horns of Havoc 3393, who we sent off to play defense in that match against Raid and Mean Machine. They would just find any open ball and snag it, and then carry it around with them as they were playing defense, and just deny one ball that was in the courtyard that somebody had missed a shot from. So that was a pretty clever, just a little extra thing, and it can make a big difference.
Yeah, and I think something to, even if you're gonna win anyway, if you can take somebody's lose breach capture and turn it into just a lose and breach, then you've got that next step ahead. Nobody can in a perfect world, nobody can overtake you if you're getting 4 ranking points per match, right?
Yep. Outside of auto.
So, right, outside of them also getting 4 ranking points per match, but if you're able to go against them and get that 1 ranking point advantage, well, obviously you would get 2 if you beat them as well. Then you can start running away with it. So I think it's interesting to think about defense in terms of a ranking strategy. I don't think that that's something that's been really thought of in the past years.
Well, I think can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
back.
Yay. All right. On the surface, playing defense in an attempt to sort of do that it sounds kind of dirty, right? But it's unlike 2012 when some people would try to do dirty moves after going after the co-op moves, Bridges. I think this is a fairly legitimate and reasonable way to sort of reduce your opponent's ranking score.
Yeah, and I mean, it falls to me more along the lines of 2014, where it's like, if you weren't playing defense with the robots that didn't have the ball, what were you doing? And it's like,
Yeah.
there is a valid strategy here where if you've got two robots that can take down the tower by themselves and get the breach, as long as you trust your third robot to get back to the batter, why don't you have them go play defense?
Yeah.
If you're trying to win the match, you're trying to win the match.
Right. You're trying to win the match, but in this game, winning the match and getting that capture while your opponents don't, especially if it's an opponent that is close to you in the rankings, can have some serious implications.
Yeah. Alrighty. So I think with that, hopefully we've talked enough about that for now. I again apologize to everybody watching for my mishap here, but we'll move on to our next topic. This is about alliance selection strategy and how all of this is going to come together when it comes to building your alliance that will hopefully win yourself a district championship. Ty, why don't you start us off on this discussion a little bit? Talk about how you guys have picked alliances and what you're looking for and how that might change going into this week.
Yeah. So when it comes to alliance selections, it's this year's quite interesting, and I think this kind of belabored topic of death by serpentine is, again, it's quite valid this year, because basically I think it's tough. So like we saw at the district championships this past weekend, we've had these low goal scorers that can rank really high by getting these ranking points consistently. However, what really matters in eliminations come the semifinals and the finals is the points, right? It matters. It's what happens after you get the qualifications, what happens after you get the breach and the capture. And by doing that with high goals, you're really setting yourself, you can really tack on a lot more points. So it's tough because the ranking points matter for your rankings. Obviously, Hey, did you guys know that? Ranking points matter for rankings?
I did read that in the rules somewhere, I think, actually, a little bit.
Wow. Yeah. It was an update.
It's a thing we have up here in New England, actually. It's not everywhere. But.
Yeah, it was in Team Update 35. So, guys, you better get on that. So,
39,
anyway.
Update 9 3/4.
Yeah. So getting the breach and the capture really helps you in your rankings during qualifications. But getting the breach and the capture is almost a necessary thing come playoffs. So I'd like to hear what, Evan, how your picking strategy was, knowing that you were at that distinct disadvantage, being a number 1 ranked low goal scorer that needed to find a way to keep up with those number 2 and number 3 alliances that could most likely have 2 potent high goal scorers.
Yeah. We basically went out and tried to pick the best high goal scorer that at the event that we felt could continue to play under defense, and that was 1318. We were familiar with them from all 3 of our district events, basically having taught them how to play through our defense. So that was, but seriously, there are a lot of good shooting robots at the district championship who didn't have a full on the batter shot. And so they would hang their wheels off or they would shoot from mid courtyard. And so we felt that was going to be something of a liability, that along with ball control, and felt that 1318 was a great pick. As well as the fact that they had gotten a high goal auto routine that was fairly consistent up until all 3 of our quarterfinal matches. And we actually weren't really expecting to be able to pick CPR. 36-63. So that kind of changed our strategy a little bit. We were expecting to have to pick a defense, the best defense robot we could, and then just have us in 13-18 trying to put balls in and get the climb at the end and hope it worked. And with CPR available, we shifted towards more of a what was going to be us as the alliance captains actually playing defense. And I do want to shout out to I believe it was the number 7 seeded alliance of that was captained by 1258 Cbot, who was able to pull off something similar and took Skunkworks alliance to 3 matches in quarterfinals by picking up Mean Machine and 4131 Iron Patriots. And so it was this kind of, we were able somehow to build an alliance where the 2 best shooters didn't include us. And our initial match strategy had us going and playing defense and then coming back for the scale, and just weren't able to quite pull that off against the incredible defense of Hotwire. And so we shifted to a triple cycler strategy for our second 2 matches, which is really, really hard to pull off. And they got the better of us.
Yeah, it is. So, Spencer, I was curious. You guys have won a couple of districts. What has your guys' plan been, and what do you guys think about it's going to be as you go forward to the rest of the this district championship?
Yeah, so far we've been going for picking the next best high goal shooter, with the thought that if we have 2 high goal shooters, no one will be able to block both of us at the same time while still getting their own capture, and that's worked out so far. As far as second picks, we've just been going for a low goal breaching robot because in Indiana defense hasn't been a big thing yet.
Really?
We'll see how. Yeah, it's been surprising. A few interesting ref calls and. It's
Interesting ref calls. So is it just that robots are at a state of operation where they can sort of put balls in the goal more readily, or is it that people don't like to play defense?
Well, so every robot that's been making balloons has been able to put at least 2 or 3 balls into the low goals, and we've gotten 45 at 2 of our events, and they've been able to put 3 balls in the low goal relatively consistently. So it just makes sense to put them on putting as many points up as possible. True. And I think going forward, a climber is going to be important. But
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody talk at once.
Go ahead, Ty. Why don't you go ahead and talk, Ty?
Yeah, it was so something we did. We went to Pine Tree in this past week or this past weekend, and we ended up seated. We ended up on the 3rd alliance with Orange Chaos 4564, and so something that we did on the way back around for a 3rd partner is we picked a robot that could A, score a few balls, and B, could play some solid defense, because we knew that we knew that A, we could outscore almost, in the quarterfinals, we could outscore the alliance that we were going to go against. But come the semifinals and the finals, we were seriously going to need some defense in order to cut down the score. And that's something that it's interesting to have to play 2 different strategies it's interesting to have to play 2 different strategies instead of just one strategy that ends up working in all of your matches. And I hadn't actually experienced that before.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen a lot is, and I'm actually kind of interested to see how it's going to play out with the district championships. And so we've seen a lot of at districts. We see a lot of at the top end somebody getting a good high goal score, and then at the end you're basically ending up with somebody who is not that great at scoring and is mostly going to be doing defense, which has led, I think, to a lot of upsets in the districts. But I think we're going to start to see, like Evan was saying, what we saw at PNW, especially with like the 8C, like he was mentioning, is 3 robots on an alliance able to contribute a lot. I know that the winning alliance at the event I was at had 3 people who could put in at least 1 or 2 balls each into the high goal, which I was shocked that they managed to come together as an alliance. And they did that from the 5th seed. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays together when we go to bigger events.
Yeah, one other thing that I do want to mention is 4 robots in the same courtyard is really crowded, and that's when that was the main problem that we ended up facing with the alliance that we had built. Was they had good enough defense to keep 13-18 from scoring enough balls that we had to try and play triple cycle. And once we did, the defense became effective enough at keeping each other in each other's way that we could score that many balls, but we weren't outscoring the 2 undefended robots on the other alliance by enough points. And we also would have won the 3rd match had we been able to get our robot on the batter. And we ended up hitting a brownout scenario in the last 5-10 seconds of the match, scoring the last ball to get the capture. So it goes to show just how effective that defense ended up being, that it came down to 1 ball in the last 10 seconds, and because of that, and because we didn't have enough time, and our battery had run down so far, we couldn't get the capture even though we got the tower down.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point that I think that is going to come into play a lot, is reliability when you're picking your alliance partners. Ruth, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Don't break.
You know, we've seen a few instances, not just in New England, but kind of across the country, where you get that third partner that's browning out, or they're having comms issues. You know, the ever popular comms issues that we're seeing this year, and it's always inconvenient, but it seems like it's happening at the worst possible time. You know, it's always happening in that last rubber match, or you got to come back and you lose that partner. I know 319 had 716 die on them a couple times. I think 190 ran into issues at Ride. So that right time, Francis. Where it was multiple robots on the alliance that ended up having issues with that, and it's
and it's also kind of interesting because, as you pointed out, it's when you die, it always happens to be at the worst possible time. I think part of that is the fact that, well, when you die on the field, you kind of don't go anywhere any further. You're not advancing from those matches, right? It's like, we need you in the semifinal, or we wouldn't have gotten eliminated. It's like, well, you got eliminated because you died. But when you guys, for everybody here, when you're looking at robots and scouting, how much more important is reliability this year than you have looked at previous years? I know that we always note whenever robots die on the field, but sometimes if it's once or twice, we kind of overlook it as just a fluke. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? I know that, Ty, you had some recent developments in this era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so in a game or in a match where you're most likely just going to be going for the all-out offensive race just to see who gets the most points, something like the finals at Hartford, then if your defensive robot or your third pick robot goes down, it's not as huge of a deal. But in a match where you're the underdog and you really need to cut down, say, 125's crazy scoring ability, and your third partner can't make it out of the neutral zone due to connection issues, then it's just a matter of, all right, 319 needs to start shooting at the high goal with their untested camera code and hope that it happens. So it kind of varies basically depending on who your opponents are, but really compared to last year, losing your partner is almost a death knell in this game, especially if they die not on the batter, then it's just over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very critical. I know that when I've seen a lot of people working on pick lists, reliability is becoming much more important. Seeing people die on the field and not having a clear vision as to why that happened and how they're fixing it is basically puts you on a do not pick list, basically. I know that where I was, Team 303 had a couple of issues in some of their final matches, but they had a lot of knowledge on how the robot worked, to the point where they tried to connect to the field for about 10 minutes at one point, and then they actually said, well, okay, we can't connect. We're just leaving, and we're going to spend this time fixing our robot. And from there on, they managed to get their connection issues mostly sorted out, because and at that point, my team was up, looking at potentially being able to pick them at one point. And we spent a lot of time making sure that they actually knew what the problem was and that it was fixed. And also on top of that, we spent a lot of time prepping our alliance partners to make sure that they were able to work the entire match. It did end up, one of them ended up dying, and unfortunately in the finals, but we would have been beaten anyway by that alliance, I'd say. Spencer, what are your thoughts on this? How's Indiana, and how's Indiana doing with that regard? I know there's only been 3 events, but have they been won cleanly, or have they been won on a technical fault?
Well, the first event was definitely slow. I think it's the farthest behind I've ever seen an event go. But since then, things have been picking up really well, and there's been like 1 or 2 teams at each event that we've had to look at and say, oh, they're causing problems, maybe we shouldn't. But for the most part, haven't been any teams that have had major issues as far as like reliability goes. So it's been nice. Definitely not what I'm used to.
Especially not in this game too.
Yeah.
I know there's been robots that have been dead in a lot of matches. We were fortunate, and this is probably one of the reasons why we did so well at district championships. We only had 1 match where a partner died on us.
Nice.
And they ended up being able to figure out what was wrong and fix it. The actual circuit board card inside the radio had broken loose and was literally just rattling around inside, so it would randomly just disconnect. So they were able to replace that radio, fix it up, and be reliable for the rest of the tournament after a really painful day for them. But yeah, speaking on the topic of being down a robot and how detrimental it is, I want to point out something else, or not something else, but the opposite. 33 Killer Bees managed to win the Troy district with only 2 robots functional in the last finals match. Their third partner ends up dying just after autonomous. And I don't know if we have video, if we can pull up the video on this, because I literally just linked it to Stephanie and kind of pulled a fast one on her. But what ends up happening is the opposing alliance, who is 3539 Biting Bulldogs and 2337 Engineers, their defensive robot is coming back to the courtyard for the capture. And there are 2 balls that are sitting in the low bar flaps. And they end up bumping both of those balls through, along with a third, netting them 2 tech fouls and changing a -1 tower to a +1 tower and losing the capture.
Oh no.
And it's just
brutal.
It's brutal, it really is. But it also goes to show that even if you're down a robot, don't give up. Because sometimes your opponents will do something that either they don't realize they're doing at the time, they don't realize what the effect of it is, or they just don't see it, but yeah, I think we've got it up right now, and it's hard to see the tower strengths, but
yeah, if you pay attention on the scoring overlay, if you can see it, or actually if you look at the lights, you can see it very clearly that they end up going up by a couple because of that.
Yeah.
And we'll play one more time for everybody here, but this is definitely an anomaly.
Right.
Hello, everybody. Alrighty. Hope you guys can hear us. Sorry about that little screw up we had there. We had a little bit of a problem with XSplit, our streaming software, but we're back up and running. So I think we're going to start off talking about climbing at the district championships. So I'll lead off that discussion a little bit. I think that we've seen climbing be rather important during the regular season and all the regionals. It's been something that a lot of alliances can use to put themselves over the top in close matches. I know that a number of alliances, especially a lot of the district areas, a climber is something that can basically be a separator when both alliances are just basically able to capture and breach. But I think it'll be interesting to see at the district championships what happens when we get alliances with multiple climbers on them, and how they're able to go up against alliances with other climbers, and see how the consistency comes into play. Evan, did you want to take this from here?
Sure. I was at a district championship with climbers. Hooray! Skunkworks put together an alliance of 2 climbers. They picked error code 1425, who is a logo-only robot with a very, very, very reliable climber, and they used that to carry them to the finals. And it really, I mean, they were going up against double shooting alliances. Skunkworks has a shooter on their robot now, but it's not, the throughput isn't great. You know, they could have put more balls in had they gone low, but they were relying on error code to get the throughput, and they would put in 3 or 4 high goals in the match and get the points out of it. And then, you know, double climb, as long as you've got the tower down, a double climb is worth basically 4 balls. So that's a big deal, especially in an event without a whole lot of reliable climbers. So certainly makes a big factor and allows an otherwise mediocre robot to really step up and be able to be the number 2 overall selection. You know, if error code didn't have a climber on there, I mean, they're good, right? But there's nothing that indicates that they could be a number 2 overall selection and help carry that alliance to finals.
Yep, and I think that as we continue to go throughout the season, as we come to the conclusion, basically, I think we're going to see scores get even tighter. You know, we've seen at the beginning of the season, scores were very, very tight as people were basically breaching and scoring a few extra balls here and there and not guaranteeing any sort of a capture. And we're getting to the point now where we're reaching a new peak, things are coming back into phase as people are breaching and capturing and doing a lot of high goal shots. So being able to create a differentiation, so it can really make a difference here. You know, and also who could forget, you know, all the failed climbs we've had this year. You know, these climbs are becoming critical to some alliances' strategies when it gets close like this. 2056 missed a climb and lost the event. Their only event they've ever lost. You know, so I know that Team 3314, very, very good climber, looks a lot like Team 1983's. Goes along with a really great robot. But their alliance required the climb in order to be able to defeat other alliances, and in the matches where they weren't able to climb, they didn't win. You know, it's rough when that happens, but it's kind of a fact of the game in that regard.
It's kind of interesting. You think back all the way to week half with 179 at Palmetto, and the amount of separation that their functional scaler gave them at that event. To have those extra points back when points were much, much rarer, especially high goal points, was pretty huge.
Absolutely. I think we're about ready to move on to our next topic here. Does anybody else have anything to add on this? All righty, we Gucci. All right, we're going to go on real quick. We're going to talk about tower strength. Ruth, you've been running some numbers lately.
I have.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've sort of sussed out of the interwebs?
All right. So those of you who watched the show last week, I made a bold prediction that we weren't going to see tower strength raised for district champs. We'll almost definitely see it raised for world champs. And we're starting to see some numbers that may end up backing that up. So comparing week to week and then comparing all of those to the district champs that we had last week, we were seeing, let me make sure I'm on the right screen. In the district champ qualifiers, we were seeing a capture rate of just under 40% in quals.
Damn, that seems high. What is that? What is it normally?
That's kind of high. So let's look at week 6 qualifiers. So you know, everybody competing the same week, they've had the same amount of play time. We're looking at about 10% of all matches across week 6 competitions. Average for the season in quals is about 8%. that's a big difference. Actually a lot closer in limbs and playoffs. It's average for all qualifying events. Regionals and districts. We were seeing right around 25%, but it's not that close. We're seeing about 50% in district champ limbs. And here's the really fun part. And we'll do a quick survey before I spit out this number. How many levels what tower level do you think we'd need to reach so that at world champs, if we're seeing the same numbers that we're seeing at district champs, how strong do you think the tower would need to be before we reach, let's go with 10% in quals?
Why do you pick 10%?
Bring it back down to everybody else.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah. So
all right.
Bring it back down.
Spencer, I'm going to start with you on that one. Why don't you go first?
I think it's at least 14, maybe 16.
14. All right, 16.
Wow.
Because if you put it like to 10 or 12, what's going to end up happening is that there's just going to be the good teams that can get it by themselves, and then the bad team, and then like the average not god tier teams are just going to have to not be able to play defense ever, and it's just going to push it way in favor of the high teams and mess up everyone else. So in order to make it actually be competitive, it has to be really high to the point where one good team can't do it.
What's your thought, Evan, on that?
Oh, geez.
Now remember, Ruth's been running some numbers, so she has a potential solution.
Yeah,
in the wings.
I don't think I'd go as high as 14. I think maybe 12. Because the problem is that if you start getting up to where those top teams are the only ones that can really get it, and that's dependent on match schedule, I think you're going to drop way below, way below 10%. I think you're going to need something, somewhere around 12, where if you got 2 robots that can each put 6 balls in, which is not too terribly uncommon at this level of play, then you'll be able to get it. Certainly, it forces a strategy shift, right?
Right.
All those matches that we sent an alliance partner over to play defense because we knew we had the capture in hand with 2 robots. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Ty, what is your thought?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out the interesting ranking system that Spencer uses. We have God tier, and then we have average.
It's kind of like StarCraft. It's like we have everybody from Europe and North America, and then we have the Koreans we have here.
Yeah, we've got Grandmaster, and then everybody else is a scrub.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty interesting because, like Spencer said, if we bring it to like a 10 or a 12, then you're going to have these god tier teams the only teams that are actually good are going to be, they're going to go from what I think we had 60-70% capture rates in quals for some of these teams, and they're going to go from that to like maybe 50%, but everybody else is going to go from 25% to 5%, and that's what's going to be, there's going to be this disparity. And I really don't think that there's a number you can choose that fixes that disparity. I think basically what we've got right now is, it's almost like they hit the nail on the head here. Is if you've got 3 fairly good if you got 3 robots, I'm getting ahead of myself. You have to realize that we spend a lot of time talking about 971 and 254 and 1678 and 2056, et cetera, all these amazing top-level, incredible teams, but they make up like less than 1% of what the actual FRC world does.
Yeah.
And, the larger majority, it takes 3 of these robots or 2 or 3 of these robots to get the capture, and raising that is really only going to help that 1%, and that's cool because the 1% is exciting and they're really fun to watch, and we all want to see what they can do on Einstein. But you've got to think about how this is going to affect the other 90% of the teams that are going to be at World Champs.
I think it's interesting to kind of cycle back to what we were talking about earlier in the show with low goal cyclers and how they have the ability to seed first right now, just because the points don't matter so much, and they're often faster than a high goal cycler, and can put more balls in. And I think you start increasing the tower strength, and it almost disproportionately favors the low goal cyclers over the sort of middle of the pack or even the above average high goal scorers up to the point where you get to the what we'll call the god tier teams, that can put in 7-8 balls by themselves in the high goal. Because it's not nearly as high of a bar to be able to do that with a decent low goal robot.
It's true.
So I think that would be really interesting to see what happens. I think you'll end up with more low goalers that seed even higher, but now they may actually be more valuable in playoffs than they had been previously. So
yeah. Well, with that, Ruth, you did the analysis. You looked at sort of how low you would need to, how high you need to make the tower strength to make the district championship values we saw this week match the regional values that we saw this week. So what does that number come out to?
So before I say that, I'm just going to point out that the chat was thinking somewhere in the 12 to 14 range. The point at which we were seeing about 10% capture rate in district champs was at 11. So we had to add 3 ranks to the tower.
So what you're saying is we'd have to turn this up to 11? Let's just be clear on that.
Yes, we would have to turn this up to 11.
I think we have to do it just because
that. And then the entire championship is just Spinal Tap themed. We just play hair metal the whole time.
Perfect. Fantastic. So, if we hit that 11 number, fun fact, we would have had 1 capture in week 1, for a grand total of approximately 0.5% of all possible captures that week. Yeah, so if headquarters bumps it up to 11, if they turn it all the way up to 11, we'll see about 10% captures. We should see about 10% captures in quals at champs. We would actually see a huge drop. We would be seeing the numbers we saw in week 1, week 2 in playoffs. If everything held true, we'd be seeing about 15% or so capture rate in playoffs. So
now the one caveat is that this data doesn't take into account teams stopping scoring once they get to the capture, or playing differently to get the capture, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, again, we spent a lot of time talking about defense earlier. I'm going to throw this out to, I'll throw it to Ty first, and then I'd love to hear what Spencer has to say. If that tower strength is just that much higher, is that going to change the way you're playing? If looking at these numbers, 10% of the teams are only going to get that capture, is that going to change the way that you're doing your strategy during the match? Is that going to change how you're picking as far as do you get that local cycler who's going to be that much more consistent? What do you guys think?
From a pure strategy standpoint, which would be a great way to answer a pure strategy question. In terms of choosing alliances, choosing the defense really becomes a lot less important, and maybe those pure breacher bots that we saw have so much success in the first 2 or 3 weeks, maybe those guys start to come back up to the top, where you can, if the two top teams only have to worry about cycling and not breaching, maybe they can squeeze in those extra ball or 2 or 3 balls per match and still keep that capture rate while that breacher bot takes care of the defenses. What do you think, Spencer?
Well, we've already found that just being able to, like, the breach seems to get itself done, and so we haven't really used a breach bot except for just getting the one to take a while out of the way. But I think that what raising the tower strength would really do is just, it did make it so that no one could play defense except for the good teams, and you'd be picking a whole lot more based on who can put balls in the goal and less based on anything related to defense, because only except for the god tier teams that can afford to not have a robot scoring any balls.
Yeah, that's true. We're gonna see that we're gonna see what happens at the World Championship. I think that most technically for this week, they first could still change the strength. They didn't really specify in the rules.
In their rules update. In the rules update, they said that the tower level will not be changed for district championships. So we can read pretty strictly into that language when they use the plural.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I didn't actually see that specifically said. I thought they just didn't say anything, right? Like they said,
no,
said
no,
yes
they
by
actually
saying
said
nothing.
specifically that they were not going to change it for district championships.
Well, in other news, folks, I don't read the team updates. I just get the TLDR from the folks on GameSense. So, anyway, Ruth, thank you for those numbers. It's very interesting. I think we'll definitely want to look more at that for our championship special as we get closer. So, with that, let's head into shout-outs. Everybody, let's shout out your favorite teams or people this week. Evan, why don't you lead us off?
All right, cool. Well, I got two today. My first one goes out to 33 Killer Bees. I love their robot this year. They've won both their district events, and I'm rooting for you guys at district championships. Just a really cool, unique little machine there, and so fun to watch. And my other shout out goes to 5895 Petty School Robotics out in Mar. They just went out and won their district event as a rookie team last week as the Alliance captain of the number 5 seed. They beat Francis in finals, so any team that beats Francis...
Not me, they didn't beat me. They beat a bunch of people, not just 190.
And introducing Team 190, Francis.
Yeah.
But seriously, from one rookie to another, excellent job, guys. Fantastic looking robot, and looking forward to seeing you guys go far at Mar District Champs as well.
Cool. All right, Ruth, who are you shouting out this week?
Speaking of 190, 190 is actually going to be competing for Engineering Inspiration at New England District Champs. Good luck, guys. Really pulling for you. Wish I would see a robot there, but can't wait to see you guys play down at championships.
Yeah, buddy. And we could have brought the robot, but we decided against it for a number of reasons. But Stephanie this week, she's shouting out to 319, represent Big Bad Bob. Good job. Good luck, guys. Hope you're going to do great. She's also shouting out to Team 67, the Heart team from up there in Michigan. They've been pretty hot this week. They've got a big old arm, just like Apex does. And Stephanie says big arms are cool. So gotta love that there. This week, I'm going to shout out to Team 177, the Bobcats. They're a great bunch of folks. They seem to be hitting their stride this year. I'm hoping that they're going to send out a stellar performance at district championships. Hopefully they take the whole thing. That would be great because I'd love to see them make their way to the championship again this year because I think they actually have a robot that might fit the Bobcat style for getting onto Einstein this year. So I think I'm going to say I'm going to knock on wood. I'm going to hope it happens. But anyway, with that, Ty, give me your shout out this week.
So my shout out goes to Team 1024, the Kilobytes. They're one of only 7 teams in the entire world to win 3 events this year, and
Only
they
7
look like only 7. Why is that only? There's like 3,000 FRC teams.
Back when I started, if you won 3 events, you won all the events practically.
They won all the Indiana events.
That's true.
Yeah, I think they're gonna keep that up, and they look like favorites to win this weekend.
The last time 1024 won 3 events, they made it to Einstein.
Calling it now.
Just saying.
Not bad. Probably with the help of Spencer's team. Spencer, who are your shout-outs this week?
Okay, I'm going to do 2 shout-outs. One, 1058, the PVC Pirates. They named the robot Low Expectations and have gone on to win 3 district events and an EI. And that's been just as a logo bot with a climber, and now they have a shooter. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. Second shout-out to PNW Team 4060 Swag. They didn't make it to district champs, but they built a cool robot, and they've been helping my team 1747 with our climbers. So shout
Are
out
you
to
doing
them
an
for helping.
inflatable bag?
You'll see.
Oh no.
Oh boy. Oh boy. This will be good.
I hope you're not full of hot air.
God. Anyway, with that, please stop the show. Okay, we're gonna take a
And
break.
the pain now.
Okay, we're gonna take a break, everybody. We're gonna take a 5-10 minute break. We're gonna go to a Q&A after that. Again, if you have questions for us, in the Twitch chat, type !Q and then your question. It'll get sent to us, and if it's good, we'll answer it live on the air. So, barring any further technical difficulties, we hope to see you guys in just a few minutes. But before we go, real quick, I want to say a big thank you to Spencer. Spencer, thanks for taking the time to be on the show and for getting a pretty cool-looking studio setup over there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll see everybody in just a couple of minutes. Bye-bye for now. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for sending in all the questions. Again, if you have any more questions you'd like to ask us, just type !Q followed by your question in the Twitch TV chat, and we'll answer it on air if we like it. Alrighty, here comes the first question for the evening. Coming to us is... All right. Oh, this is a big one. Okay, so against an alliance with an equal scoring potential, would it be worth it to pick the drawbridge over the Sallyport as a defense to decrease the divisibility of a powerhouse on the other team, but to the detriment of a robot on your alliance? That's a doozy. TLDR, is it a good idea to pick the drawbridge in an attempt to make the vision for a high power alliance worse? Evan, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'm going to go with yes on this one because that was a big factor in how the number 8 seed was able to upset us at District Champs. The audience selection going into quarterfinals was the drawbridge, and then they threw up the portcullis next to it as well. And the vision impairment was enough there to really be able to... I mean, our alliance had significantly more scoring potential than theirs was. I don't think there was any way anybody was going to argue that. But they were able to bring us down and help discombobulate our alliance enough that they basically blew up the match, and they continued to play drawbridge and portcullis against us for the second and third match, even though we did not play drawbridge and it was no longer the audience selection. So it certainly worked there. Almost didn't, but I mean, it obviously helped them bring the level down. That being said, if you're going up against guys with camera poles, I don't know really how much effect that would have. We didn't have that. None of our alliance had that. We borrowed one, but we didn't have any practice with it.
Yeah, we had the exact same thing happen to us in the finals at Perry Meridian, and the drawbridge definitely messed with us. So we'll have some changes for the next event to make it not be a problem again.
Yeah, and it's something to point out is that Sallyport points are easy to get, right? So if you're giving them the Sallyport, you're basically giving them 10 points. And if it's, it's not a huge deal if you can go and get your own 10 points too, but if you're not guaranteed that capture really early and really fast, then getting those 10 points in the Sallyport can really hurt you in terms of time. So I think it just means drawbridge all the time, every time when it comes to eliminations, especially if you can handle.
Yeah, I think the other thing to note is that the drawbridge on top of everything is basically a actual rock wall. Like there's probably only maybe one or two teams at an entire event that can effectively lower the drawbridge in a way that can create points. And unlike the Sallyport, like you mentioned, Ty, it's very, very hard to get a drawbridge train going because the drawbridge is so floppy and wants to curl up so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Evan, you wanted to say something about, I think, where the drawbridge was used?
Yeah, everybody in Canada, up in Ontario, likes to play the drawbridge against each other in playoffs, so it has to be good, right?
Basically, I mean,
next question.
They have the best robots there, so. Alrighty, well, with that, let's go to our next question here. All right, coming up is, what do you guys think the winning alliance at the World Championships will be in terms of strategy? I think we're going to have lots of points being scored. Maybe 3 robots on each side. Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah. No, but real though, Spencer, what is your initial thought as you try to think about what the winning alliance on the championship was going to be?
At least 2 high goal scoring robots that can shoot over defense, and then some other robot that can do whatever the given strategy needs. Because you're gonna need a whole lot of different things to get all the way through a division and then through Einstein.
Fair enough. I think that one of the key strategic points is going to be not breaking, because these robots are going to see a lot of wear and tear going through 2 elimination rounds in a row. If we've seen some of the best robots in first have problems and die on the field, it's going to be absolute murder out there when they get to Einstein, once they go through their entire division and then all the way through. And we've been saying it, that fourth partner is going to have to come in at some point, because you're going to have to take the rest for at least 1 year partners at least probably once during that time. You may even just have to, because they're not going to work. Anybody else have any thoughts?
That's but yep.
That's that. All right, we're keeping our super tech to ourselves, I think.
I think defense is going to be a big factor. I really do. I think your winning alliance definitely going to be high goal scoring robots. I have a hard time seeing a winning alliance on Einstein that has a low goal scorer as one of its primary scorers. I think there's definitely going to be some scalers up there. At least 1, probably 2. I mean, realistically, the only robots that could probably get away without a scaler at that level of play are if they're able to do a 2 mulatto and make up the 10 points that way.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I think we're going to go to our next question. This is it's a doozy here, interesting one. All right, coming up next question is, should a field fault be called every time defenses are set up wrong for matches? I'm going to actually throw it to Ruth first, only because she was a defense coordinator at an event this year. Ruth, not to be like, did you ever screw up, but what's the procedure for this possibly happening, and did you ever see it at your event?
I did not see it at, I didn't see that happen at Reading. If it did, I'm so sorry. I'm pretty confident that all the defenses entered were correct. If they weren't what the team was expecting, then they had been randomized. I'm actually not sure what the procedure is on the scoring table side. Everything that I've seen is that what's put in the system once the button is clicked to send it to the scoring system, that's what it is. Now, if it's a matter of the field reset, put the wrong one out, that's going to be an FTA call.
Yeah,
that's not something I can speak to.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen anybody complain about wrong defenses in any events I've been to. Have you guys seen that?
We did. We saw it happen a few times at our week 1 event, and mentioned it after the fact, and it was we didn't get a replay for it. We weren't really asking for a replay for it. We were just kind of saying, hey, these aren't the defenses, and we actually caught it before the match. So basically, they said, "Oops," and it wasn't completely the wrong defenses. They just weren't in the order that they said they were going to be in, that we were handed. I don't think it's really happened since then. I think that was just kind of a week 1. Everybody, field reset was new, defense coordinator was new thing. We did have one issue at Philomath in the finals where they had both the moat and the ramparts out on the same side of the field. And that was caught before the match started, and they took a break and fixed that. So, I don't know. If the match starts with the wrong defenses in there, is it a field fault? I'm not really sure. My understanding from the issue that happened that caused the replay at PNW District Champs Finals was they pre-started the field with the wrong defenses. The defenses didn't match the field, and so then they had to restart and reboot some things, or I don't know. I don't know how that side of the FMS works, but I think it actually gets hard to start the match if you have actually the wrong defenses out there. It's just if they're in the wrong positions, oops.
So did you say that you found out that there was an incorrect setup of the defenses, and you pointed it out, and they weren't changed?
It wasn't that it was it didn't match the sheet that they gave us. The order didn't match the sheet that they gave us. And they did not. It was in qualifications, and they didn't change it.
The chat said that there was a problem with it at Pine Tree in the quarterfinals.
Time.
Actually, I may be sorry. I might be incorrect on that. I think the order matched the sheet that was handed out, but it wasn't the order that we handed the defense coordinator.
Okay.
And when we had the papers to show that. I don't know. Steph can correct me on that. I basically haven't dealt with the defense selection, so.
Ty, did you see it?
The issue at Pine Tree was me. I was just running around there, whispering into the defense selector's ears and just confusing them.
How many times I got to tell you, stop subliminally messaging all of the volunteers at events. It's
That's
getting
what
to be out of hand.
I put little screens in my safety glasses that would just flash like rock wall. Whenever you like, it was
Rough terrain.
Yeah,
Give
you know how
me the rough terrain.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that brings up an interesting thing. I think it's really cool how the audience is made up entirely of teams, and those teams want to see their teams win. So in eliminations or playoffs, rather, the audience selection is more often likely to be the easier defense, which I think is pretty neat.
You know, I've seen a mix of that, actually.
Yeah.
We always try to go for generally the harder defense, except the drawbridge, because we know that our robot's designed to go over everything, so we want to give the opponent the hardest challenge we can. But you're right, we've lost a few times and gotten we've gotten the rough terrain a few times. It's like, come on, guys, really? Like, it's for both teams. You got somebody who can go over they can go over the rock wall. Come on, man. But either way, I don't know. I think the audience selection, while it was not like a true poll like some people thought it was going to be, I think it's actually served its purpose, which I think is to get the audience involved in the game a little bit more. That's for sure. I think the audience is a little bit more active, and it's a little less boring to sort of sit around and wait between elimination matches.
Right. So I want to close out this question about defense coordinator stuff with some advice for teams. When you are submitting your defenses, make sure you tell the defense coordinator what your team number is. You know, they may not see your drive badge, they may not recognize your shirt. Say, I am from this team on this color alliance, and get them to repeat it back to you. And just, you got to confirm every step of the way, you know. So I want the rock wall in 2, I want the sally port in 4, and I want the ramparts in 5. You know, and get them to say it back to you. There should be a good back and forth. You should make sure that they're actively confirming everything you're telling them. Because again, once it gets put in the system and once it's submitted, it can't be changed. Yep. So if they end up misclicking, you know, it's unfortunate.
GG.
Yeah, it can't be fixed. So make sure that you're asking them to confirm. You know, they're going to be speaking as a defense coordinator, the last thing we want to do is mess up your match. You know, well, not mess up your match, but, you know, inconvenience you in any way.
Send out the subliminal messages.
Yeah, be proactive. Ty can tell you how annoying I was about making sure that everything was confirmed and correct before I was putting stuff in. You know, the person from the drive team, 133 in the chat, can tell you. You got to make sure you confirm it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so lead off with your team number and the color alliance you're on, and get them to repeat it back to you. And that's the best thing I can suggest.
Sounds good to me. All
right.
right.
Answer the question. Is it a field fault? Should it be a field fault?
I think it's a sad.
Question.
Yeah.
Next question. No, next
It's-
question.
It's unfortunate. No, next question.
No, I think my answer is I don't actually think it's a problem. Should it be a field fault? No, because everybody should catch it before it happens. It's one of those things that's like, is it a field fault? No, because it doesn't happen, which is kind of weird, but yeah. Anyway, so let's go to our next question coming up. Steph, what do you got for us? All right, here we go. Coming up, are more scalers coming for championships? Cheesecake, maybe? Question mark. Spencer,
More
you talked
than-
about a scaler.
Yeah, I think definitely starting this week, scalers will become the norm. At least in Indiana, we already have 9 scalers that have been proven to work, and I know of at least another 6 or 7 that should be on this weekend. So come championship, scalers will be very, very common among top teams, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the top teams that don't have scalers are certainly planning something, or working on something. As far as cheesecake goes, I don't expect to see a whole lot of cheesecake scalers. We've talked about it a little bit on the show before, but the fact that you're relying on somebody who's never had one before to understand how to properly line it up and drive it and stuff, it does take some practice to get right. And I think honestly, the blocking wall cheesecake is going to be a lot more prevalent at championships just because of the number of robots that either have low vision or low shots. Even if you've got an outer work shot, if it's coming from low down, a blocker can get in the way there a lot, or at least force you to move more than you otherwise might have to. And I think with the number of alliances that are going to be running a defensive robot, that's a much easier and more reliable cheesecake to be throwing on than a scaler.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And
Why not both?
Yeah, that's true. You got 4
well,
robots.
I mean, it's true, right? Ty does have a point. You can make a big old block with a hanger on the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things we're going to see a lot more teams use a cheesecake or not a cheesecake. They're going to add a hanger on their robot, but they will be unfortunately surprised to see that if they don't have it on their real robot before they get to the championship, it's not going to work as good as they had hoped, because a hanger is a fickle beast that is not a plug-and-play solution for most teams.
Well, and the championship schedule doesn't really allow for a whole lot of major overhaul modifications. You've basically got like 5 hours on Wednesday night, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky, you can maybe get it in some sort of half configuration and not have it on for your first match, because your first match is going to be at like 9 o'clock or something. Your second match is going to be until around lunchtime.
Yeah.
So you might be able to squeak it in, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's not a lot of time at the championship. This ain't no 400 team championship. This ain't no 400 team champ, guys. So.
Well, just access to the practice field to be able to test it out. It's not like I don't know if they're necessarily going to have the wood bars and things, that you could just chest your scaler on. You may have to go wait in line on the real field, and it's a lot of time to get something like that up and running and get it reliable.
Do you think we'll see teams bringing their own hanging bars, just like we saw people bringing their own steps for can grabbers last year?
Probably,
Absolutely.
honestly. Yeah.
Yep. It's not that hard to build,
Yeah.
You just have a platform and a bar, or even just a bar. So I think it's quite possible. All right, we're gonna go on to our next question here. Coming up is, all right, let me make sure. All right, will state championships, district championships, be competitive enough next week that we will see captures on both sides, and climbs being the only difference? I kind of, Ty, why don't you start this off?
So I think we've already seen a match where it's been very close like that, and that was at the match where 2056 unfortunately lost, in which the climb was the difference. But I don't think that the fact that state champs will be competitive is the reason why climbs will be the difference. I think we're forgetting about, or I think the person who's asking this question is forgetting about, high goal shooting and defense, and there's a lot of variability there. Just because you're getting the capture and the breach doesn't mean that that there aren't a ton of different ways to score aside from climbing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think that there is a lot of variability now that we've entered into a phase where robots at district championships have a lot of different abilities. I think that it may come into play either in like the quarterfinals or the finals, where you're got a lot of evenly paired teams. But I don't know. I think that I will say this. I think that climbs will not be the difference. I think missed climbs will be the difference more than anything else. Basically, that you're going to see a lot of teams depend on the hang to get them that last bit to overcome the higher scoring alliances and fail at it. Basically, just because of the number of climbers we generally see at events. So, anybody else have any last thoughts to think about that question there? Bueller? Nobody?
Nope. Next question.
All right, cool. We got one last question here coming up for us from Stephanie. Question is, will 177 take the secret juice again and make another Einstein appearance? (O). Oh wait, that's a face. Okay. All right.
Could you say
let's
it's
go
an
around.
O face?
You could. Let's start from the bottom. Spencer, were you even in high school when 177 was the dominant Einstein team? No? Oh my god, I feel old now. Ugh.
Yeah.
All right. So can you
I can't. Not really.
By the way, everybody, Spencer is the youngest person to ever appear on GameSense as a guest. So, all right, Ruth, what are your thoughts then?
Yes.
Swag. All right, Evan, what's yours?
I'm going with yes.
Yes? All right.
Going with Bobcat Magic gets back.
Bobcat Magic is back. Ty, what's your thoughts?
Well, let's see. So the chances of them making it to Einstein are much higher because we now have 4 team alliances as well as 8 divisions since the last time they made it on. Is that correct?
Yep.
That's true.
And then additionally, if we look at their district ranking, they are seeded 8th in the district, which means they've pretty much already qualified for World Championships. So if they're there and their chances have basically tripled, it basically means that we should just give them the medal already.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, because 100% times 3 is 300%. So they're going to win all 3 champs in 2021.
Oh, and on that bombshell,
you heard it here first, guys. 3 champs. I guess I think that they have a good shot at making it this year, but I think it's for a weird reason. I think their robot's good. I think that the only reason they didn't make it to Einstein in 2014, the last time they were at the championship, is because their robot was too good. I think that they found a space where they hit what they want. They're good at what they do. They have the ability to help any team, and they still have a lot of some of the mentors on that team that drive them to the world championship status and have that world championship strategy mindset. So I think it's much more possible this year than we've seen since even 2014. So I'm hoping. Good luck to you all out there. Well, with that being said, I think that's going to be the end of the show for tonight. Another big thanks to Spencer for joining us this evening and putting a lot of work in to get this studio looking good like this. What did you guys? Is this like something you guys just have set up, or what is this?
My roommate works for this school's production team thing.
Wow, nice, cool. All right, well, anyway, Spencer, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it again, and thank you everybody for watching us here. We'll see you again in just a week or so, maybe. I think it's gonna be about a week and a half for our championship special, and then we'll see you again sometime around the championship for some other special stuff that we're going to be doing. So with that, I want to wish everybody a good night and good luck at your district championships. Bye bye now.